Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Omega Files. I'm your host, Dr. Freedom, and good night. And tonight we're going to sit down and have a talk about the latest episode that we've been offered for Series 11, The Witchfinders. Yes, I'm in my informal gear because I just spent, half the night driving back from Chicago. So I'm having a lazy day before I go back to work. All right, so let's go around the panel. When I call on you, go ahead and give me your opening thoughts on The Witchfinders. We're going to start at the top this time. We're going to start with Connor Farley. Go on and hit it. Hit us with it, Connor. What did you think?
Overall, I liked it, but it suffered from quite a slow start, I thought. Alan Cumming was great by the end of it, but at the beginning, God, he was irritating. His accent was too much. He was OTT, basically. Beautifully well shot. My God, like they really got the sort of the mist and the darkness of the setting and the time period spot on. Some of the like there's one shot where they kind of go over the trees rather than like just going through the forest instead, and it's just really beautifully well shot. So that's credit to Sally Afrahamian. Jodie was exceptional, actually. I thought that this was the most doctory performance that she's given, especially when she was talking about how James has to deal with his own personal struggles rather than taking out on everyone else. That was actually a moment of seriousness. But at the beginning, there was a point where she was trying to establish some authority over Lady Savage. And again, much like last week, it fell flat because she undermined herself by being serious one minute, and then the next second, she's bumbling around trying to find a psychic paper. I just don't see why that has to be the way that she's written when she's trying to be serious. It always seems to be when she's serious as well. Ryan is, God, I wish they got rid of him. I really do. He's becoming baggage, and it's not emotional when you're just basically telling every person within 2 feet of you your life story. They might as well do what they did at the beginning of The Woman Who Fell to Earth and put like a vlog section on the end of every episode just for Ryan to update us on how bad his life is, because I'm getting to the point where I'm feeling unsympathetic for his character, and that's not a good thing, especially when he's probably only going to be a one series companion, and you at least want to remember him by something. Graham was great. Again, he's the standout companion of the episode. Yaz, I liked Yaz in this one, actually. She had a lot more to do. She was a lot more hands-on trying to help the girl whose name that I can't remember. Tilly, I think. Trying to help her with her personal grief, almost. But as an episode and the threat in this was exceptional as well. I loved the shots of the witches walking through the manor with the axe. That was something that we've lacked severely this series, and that's kind of remedied it a little bit. Overall, yeah, it was a great episode. It just suffered from a really slow start, and I wish that Alan Cumming just kind of didn't come out with that panto performance right at the start, and he just dialed it back a little bit.
I know sometimes when I see Ryan up here now, I halfway expect to hear a violin solo to start. And there's this guy standing in the background. Oh, okay, Philip.
Okay, for me, this was a very good story. I will echo what Connie says. It did have a slow start. There's a lot of verbal garbage going on towards the first half of the story, which is fair enough. I think the only part for me when it started picking up is when we first saw the zombie witches, and from that point on, it kind of picked up for me. I said this in the in a conversation before, but I will say Jodie has been really good in this episode. She's come across more doctory in this episode, and also the fact that she spent most of the time being wet about the episode. I give her kudos for that, because it must be cold during those scenes. Although you can see it look cold. The story itself was all right. It was good. Alan Cummings, for me, he was a bit overly, a bit over the top a little bit for me. And just for a bit about him taking the shine to Ryan, did we really need that? In a sense, I know what they were trying to say, but it was a little bit too much in your face. The woman that played Miss Savage, she was my favourite of the lot. She stood out quite well for me. And I mean, and then her transformation into that kind of wood creature, that was very good, well done. The execution of her at the end, there's a resolution. Okay, it was fine, but I could have done with a bit more threat from her, what we got. But overall, I enjoyed it. Yes, yeah, she was a bit more better in this story as well. It's always as if she's a one man, savior machine sometimes. Ryan, yeah, he did come across bumbling in this one, and a bit like, who cares? You know what I mean? It's like that. And then, again, Graham took a bit of a backseat, I found. But yet again, he recognises a place where they land. But before in Rosa, he knew about the bus driver stuff. Then here again, he learns about the place where they are. He knows about the place where they are. So he's good for sort of like a human map, so to speak. But again, he took a back seat in the story. I did enjoy the story, and it's kind of fun. I would watch it again over and over. So good on them for this one, I reckon. So that's my bit for it now.
Okay, DWC.
It was kind of a mixed bag for me, this episode. I mean, I did like that it was a lot darker, and it is, I think, we're going to be one of these episodes that will have shown in schools, kind of like I feel with Rosa, because it is a good historical piece. It is about the witch trials. But some things where I let down was a bit Alan Cumming. Yeah, I thought he was over the top. And as others have pointed out with previous episodes, the thing about how with the historical ones they've been adding a sci-fi element that don't seem to be needed. And again, I've never completely felt that with the others, but this one, yeah, I don't think you completely needed the sci-fi element with this. The witch trial in and of itself was kind of harrowing enough. And but I don't know what. Maybe you could have just had the idea that Beatrix was suffering from a plague and she was trying to kill off everyone that knew it. What else can I say? Well, I can echo kind of Connor would have said with Jodie. I did like Jodie. I liked that she was a bit more authoritative, but again, kind of fumbled back a bit when trying to find the psychic paper. And I've saved this bit for last because it's really the thing that should not matter, but maybe it's because of the communities I've been with, but I did find it hard not to notice they were kind of hammering the thing about being a woman in that time, in that episode. And once is okay, but they kind of went on a bit, and it is the most insignificant part of it. And just did they have to go on? That's all I can really think about that. It wasn't really necessary. Just say it once, move on. Yeah, it would have happened in that time period, but so overall, it's okay. Not one I'd particularly write home about, but it is what it is.
Okay, all right, let's move along here. All right, Bo, what do you think about it?
Yeah, I thought it was a really great episode. I liked Alan Cummings' portrayal as King James. He's got mummy issues. I thought that Jodie was in top form as the Doctor. I liked Yes and Graham in this episode. Ryan not so much. I hope that Graham and Yes stay for another series. I like the zombified witches in this one. I like the Morax. I thought the Morax was really good. Yeah, it's a really great episode set during the witch trials. Yep. And Jodie Whittaker as the Doctor in this episode. I hope that this is how the Doctor should be. So I hope this continues on for the final 2 episodes and the next series. That's if she stays on. So yeah, it was a great episode.
Alrighty. Okay, Paul.
Hey, it was a little bit of a mixed bag for me. How can I say? I liked the story. The story was okay. The acting by everyone was good. Mistress Savage, played by, if I get her name right, Siobhan Finneran. She played it straight. She played it really well. And then there was Alan Cummings, who played it pantomime. Yeah, very pantomimey for me. I mean, he was good, don't get me wrong. He was really good at it. But they just didn't seem to match up. You had one playing it straight and one playing it pantomimey. But perhaps it worked for other people, but I don't think it worked for me. I would have preferred him to be a bit less pantomimey. The Monster of the Week was okay this week. Wasn't great, but wasn't too bad. What can I say? The message this week, there was a lot of messages there. I'm not going to go into all of them. But one of the main messages I got, not just about the woman part and all that, I'm going to give that a break. The groups that are out there at the moment, not the extremist groups, but the groups that are, loving Doctor Who, hating Doctor Who, the feminism side, the masculinism side, and all that sort of thing. Sort of the message I got from that about it is basically, if you're not part of one group, then you're doing basically what the Witchfinders were doing to the other group. And I think that was the message I got from this one. Did I enjoy it as much as I did last week's Kablam? No. Is it the worst episode? No. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't great. And that's my opening statement.
All right. Okay, Graham.
Yeah, how we doing, guys? Well, for me, it's 3 out of 3 for the historicals this season. Like the guys have alluded to, it was a wee bit of a slow start. I'm going to shock some folks, and I'm not always one for over-the-top characters, but I bloody loved Alan Cummings in this. Normally, portrayals like that irritate the living crap out of me. But I feel he was a good comedic foil in what was a somewhat darker and bleaker story here. I can see where people would be irritated by that portrayal, but at the same time, he dialed it back a wee bit halfway through the episode, especially during the scene where the Doctor's tied up and he's relaying the story about his family. So, while on the one hand he is playing the pantomime villain, he's also somewhat of a conflicted soul when you strip back the layers a wee bit. So I'll cut him some leeway and cut him some slack there. Finally, we have an alien threat. That should basically please 2.5 million people on Twitter, because as of late it's just been the big bad white human. So as for that said alien threat, how did it do? It was fine. The resolution, I felt maybe slightly rushed with just getting them back into the prison on top of the hill, but what the hell, this was technically the weakest, the least lengthwise episode of the season at 46.5 minutes, so 3.5 minutes less to play with. Go figure. But overall, yeah, Jodie, one of her stronger showings for me. Bradley Walsh, for the limited time he was on screen as the Witchfinder General, and his black cap was as good as ever with the Tarantino line right at the end as well. Yeah, I'll echo the guy's sentiments. Ryan, made this to toss and cool, but give him something else today except harping on about his bloody family. Please. 3 episodes left that we know of. Change it up a bit. The needle's stuck, folks. Mandip Guild, Yaz had a bit more today as I alluded to, so that was good as well. Becca Savage, interesting character in the sense that she actually became the red herring partway through the episode. You thought she was the big bad, and obviously it was the virus. So interesting red herring, and a pantomime king in tow. Yeah, it's somewhat a mixed bag, but enjoyable nevertheless. Free for the historicals, folks.
Alrighty. Okay. Beefhead, go on ahead.
For me, it was a slight improvement on last week, but it's still sort of suffering from being a little bit inconsistent. Like the guys have said, Connor said, it looked great. The period setting, the way it was shot, it worked really well from that perspective. They've done what I was hoping that they were going to do with Miss Savage, and they had a strong female other. There was a bit in the middle where they were trying to make her seem sympathetic, and I was hoping, oh God, I hope they're not going to do what they've done before the rest of the season. And luckily they switched that round. I liked that you had a monster that looked quite good. By the end of it, the transformation she went through, it had quite a nice stylistic look to it. But like the guys have said, the start was off, to be honest with you. Up until the point where Jodie was, like Graham said, chained up with King James. Up until that point, she was still doing the same thing, undermining every serious part that she did by not being able to find the psychic paper. King James was just, pantomime is no want of a better description. His accent sort of really varied as well. It sort of went here, there, and everywhere. It reminded me of, something from the classics, the Nymons and everything like that. It reminded me of that sort of ham acting, to be honest with you. But by the time you got to that half point, it got there. There was a lot of clumsy, cringy, the gender stuff was just overdone, and I think the idea of toxic masculinity probably played a part. That King James was done as a spoiled man show, but it finished off all right. It was a slight improvement on last week. I didn't really notice much in the way of music this week, which disappointed me a little bit, because I think the music the last couple of weeks has really been taking a bit more of a forefront, which has added to it, and I feel it could have added to this week's. But it finished okay. The ending was a bit rushed. I didn't find Tosin as irritating this week as the rest of the guys. To be honest with you, I found Yaz quite boring, to be honest with you, because she's just there to be, you'll go handle the sad family member again, because that seems to be that, or exposition. It seems to be that the strongest writing is just for Graham all the way through it, as opposed to the Doctor. He's the star part in this, and outshines everyone. Graham and your female counter made it, I think, lifted Jodie to a certain degree, because she played it straight and everything like that. It was just above average, I suppose, for want of a better description. I found it hard to sort of feel any distinct sentiment by the end of it. So if you come away with it and you sort of like think, oh, brilliant, that's great, but you don't, you come away from it going, oh, I'm not sure. And it's the same thing, like Graham said as well, the needle's getting a bit stuck, because by the end of every episode every week it's sort of like, oh well, maybe next week. And that's where I'm seem to be finding myself again. Next week looks really good. This week I was really excited for it because it looked really good, but it's still, there's no point yet where they've really just hit it out of the park, apart from Rosa Parks.
Alrighty. Okay, let's move on forward. Callan.
Well, it was a bit hyper, which I don't like, really. I thought, oh, here we go again. Oh, not very cool. Alan coming as the king. All right, he played it as having a pantomime villain, but he is the king, so he can. Nobody's going to mess with the king. If the king did that in real world, nobody would criticise him. You don't want to dig into the gods. Lion, you really should be up. Okay, I'm depressed. I'm trying to dig moaning and crying all the time. Trying to be up and having a laugh with people. You know, when people get my depression. It was a bit scary because, I mean, if you got accused of being a witch in those days, that was it. You were dead meat. That's me.
All righty. Okay, Texas Tim.
I thought it was good for the most part. I think the like Graham, I think the guest cast was amazing in this. I thought they were both really good. I think that I also agree with those that say that Jodie was better this week, but I still think the problem with her is the writing. They're not writing her as a doctor. I mean, like DWC said about that little speech about how badly women are treated in this time. The doctor already knows that. I mean, the doctor shouldn't be surprised by that. I mean, the doctor's been around forever and knows everything about everything. So, I mean, going into this situation, if you wanted to make a speech about that, you could have had her explaining that to Yaz or something and saying that this is how bad that things were for women in those days. Because basically, if you're a witch, you're going to die, and if you're not a witch, you're going to die. I mean, so I don't know. I thought it was a lot of fun. The whole trappings about the witches and the twist that it's the lady or and it wasn't bad. But again, I can see the point that it still wasn't really wow. It's an improvement, but I just think that they're still not writing her as the doctor. Because the doctor would know a lot of. She acts like she doesn't know these things. She acts like she's brand new still. And I would think that by now, 8 into 10, some of the stuff would be kicking in, and she'd be a bit more doctorish. She was, but I mean, I just don't think that they're writing her very well yet. I think they're wasting her talent, to be honest.
Yeah, it's been kind of a weird run this time around because, like I said, these are things like you brought up that the doctor would already know that this is not going to be a time where you're going to march around trying to be authoritarian in a female body and get away with it necessarily, because this was the era. Yeah, the witch trials, oh my goodness. It was like they had all these things to prove whether you were a witch or not, but it was like the classic, trying to play the coin toss and it's heads I win, tails you lose. Because either way, you were pretty much boned the second you were accused of being a witch. All right, we're going to dunk you. If you live, you're a witch. If you died, okay, our bad. I mean, what? Like, that's how it was back then. And yeah, we had our share of it here in America, in Salem, which is, pretty much the well-known one here on this side of the pond. And yes, contrary to popular belief, nobody was burned at the stake. Just about everybody was hanged, if you check your proper historical facts. So it's just, just a weird time when all you had to do is have somebody point at you and go, that person's acting funny. And next thing you know, you're standing before a tribunal. And like good old-fashioned drumhead trials, justice just never was really there. It's just, ugh. Okay, I see hands already going up. All right, now before we go into that, like I said, one of my parts I really did like in this episode was the scene where you had the doctor tied up and she's talking to King James. And she's really getting under his skin, because she knows who this person is. She knows his background and all that. And by the end, he's like, who the hell are you? How do you know all this about me and all that? And I did love that scene in particular. Okay, let's start with the first person who shot their hand up. Let's go to Philip.
Okay, yeah. The thing about this episode with Jodie is this is the first time we've now seen a doctor in some sort of peril, where they decide that she's a witch and they're going to dunk her, and which they actually do. And that's what made me happy about it. For a long time, nobody's been in actual danger from TARDIS team, and she got the brunt of this being accused of being a witch, and they actually dunk her into the water. So that was a good thing for me. So I like that part of it.
Okay, DWC.
Yeah, I actually wanted to point out some of you have actually been pointed out. You might notice that Graham, he said something about how I went on the witch path and this village didn't exist, or something along those lines. Now, I'm intrigued that line was put in because some of you have been pointing out how, if you were a witch, that accused of being a witch, that was it. Yeah, interesting little fact that not many people know. I mean, yes, we did have the dunking stool and everything. We did have that. But when we the vast majority of witches in the UK, in Britain, unlike America, where they were all hanged, stuff like that, but in Britain, interesting enough, the majority of them were actually acquitted, which is rather interesting. So I wonder if that's actually why they put that line with Graham in about this version exists. And in fact, the Doctor even says, 36 people accused of witch and died, and she actually refers to it as the biggest witch trial in history. And I think, well, that number's pretty low if it's the biggest.
Okay, Connor.
It's funny that people have said that they thought it was rushed, because to be honest, I thought it was the best use of the 50 minutes that they've had, because it felt like usually in a 50-minute episode, it feels like the conclusion, the final act, is the most rushed. And while it was a slower start, so that probably could have possibly eaten into the second act and the third, it actually felt like we spent a lot more time on the conflict at the end and the conclusion. And that kind of added to it, even though we didn't get to really find out more about the zombies. I actually thought that it was a better conclusion than most episodes, especially this series, because usually the conclusion would be Jodie or a previous Doctor just waving around a screwdriver and it just kind of falls flat. It just ends. The monster are just defeated in 10 seconds. But it kind of took about 5 minutes of a sort of denouncement to really solve this episode's conflict. And I thought it added to it, to be honest, and I thought it was the best. We've talked really this series a lot about how it would probably benefit from 90 minutes because it feels like it's very stuffy. There's a lot of stuff in the space of 50 minutes and it just doesn't work. And it just felt like Joy Wilkinson here just kind of managed to get it right for once. Graham gets MVP points for the Tarantino reference as well. That was brilliant.
Okay, Graham.
Now, just to put Connor up on his point, I was one of the ones who was mentioned it was somewhat rushed. I didn't mean the episode overall. I was just talking about the part of the final act when they reopened the prison to get what was the name of that alien species? Bloody hell. I forgot the name, but the ones that look like big, giant, bloody well Ewoks.
Morax.
Morax, that's the one. Yeah, there we go. So, yeah, just basically, let's put the green flame and tap it as 3 and boom, the prison reopens. I get why they had to do that, but yeah, that was the only thing I think was a bit rushed. 46.5 minutes this episode, so as I said, not exactly 50 either. So not a bad outing.
Okay, Philip?
Just a little nitpick. Sometimes when they go into the past in their stories, I sometimes wonder, why don't anyone ever question what they're wearing? And then I'll say to myself, do they have some sort of perception filter that covers their day-to-day clothing? Because particularly in the witch trial of this time, surely those people look at them and go, you're not one of us and you're dressed in a weird way, so what are you? And it would be nice if they, whenever they go to the past, dressed apart, so they fit into the surroundings, rather than running around in their everyday to day clothing. That's just a little small nitpick, that's all.
Okay, Connor?
King James was complaining about Ryan's clothing, actually. He was complaining about the fact that he was having to wear it.
Texas Tim.
Yeah, that was another problem with the writing of the character too. That she warns them going in, try not to change anything. We got to be very careful when we visit the past, and then she proceeds to try and change everything about halfway through when she finds out what's going on. I know that's the kind of thing the Doctor always does, but again, you shouldn't really be contradicting yourself in the same story. I mean, they could have just left early on when they realized where they were, and I know that it ended up being an alien threat rather than a just witch trial threat where, they could have all been burned as witches or whatever, but still, you should not have the Doctor contradicting themselves in the same episode like that. I think that's a big problem with the writing of this particular character, and I think we tend to blame the actress, and I don't really think it's her fault most of the time.
Okay, Beef?
Yeah, I got to agree with Tim to a certain degree. It's a case of, okay, guys, checklist. Yeah, remember, we're in the past. Yeah, remember we've done this twice before. Remember, we're not really supposed to interfere. Don't touch anything. Don't do anything. And it's sort of like, well, we sort of get it by now, and they should sort of get it by now because it's sort of treading over old ground, to be honest with you. So it's this, like Tim says, the writing of the Doctor. It's just. I don't know what it is because they just don't seem to have a real handle on the character, and whether it's a case of that they've got new writers in, perhaps if they'd brought in a couple of like older writers, to be honest with you, so at least there's someone who's got a bit of a handle on it, and if they were going to do something akin to the writers' room, that they could help and steer each other in the right direction, it would benefit perhaps from having that sort of experience there. I would have liked to have seen, instead of King James being, obsessed with sticky things, really, for him to basically do the thing of, he's God's representative on Earth, so he's not really going to be questioned or challenged, and he's going to do what he bloody well likes, whatever people says. And it just seemed to be, that he was just, made to be for a lot part a clown, an indecisive clown, which, sort of, it does. It sort of, I think it would have been better to have had two hard-faced leads, to be honest with you, to really elevate the sort of tension, and then an idea of, that you're fighting against it and you're making a cause and standing up for something, because it just seemed to be a bit jolly hockey sticks, for want of a better description. It was a very, very twee.
Okay, Graham?
Just to pick beef up on his point, I can see where he's coming from in terms of having a more brass and hard-nosed King James in this episode. But the reason I enjoyed it was because basically the minute you do that, people were complaining, oh God, another high white Caucasian male authority figure again against the female Doctor and her cronies. You can't win no matter what you do. Again, I get Beef's point. It would have been interesting to see it that way, but I'm kind of glad they went with Becky Savage instead.
All right, Philip?
Was it necessary for King James to defend every small town trials in the country? I mean, he's the king of the country, and there he is running around in villages overseeing something that could be done with somebody else or some other charge rather than himself. I was just wondering if that's the thing that he normally did. That's what looking at his books and check that one out, to be honest. Okay.
All right, Paul?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I agree with Tim and Beef. It's the writing that's the problem at the moment. They're not giving Jodie that wow factor that the other Doctors have had. She's not standing out, but I don't think that's her fault. I think, like the others, that's the writer's fault. They need to make her stand out more, more of a wow factor. Yes, this is the Doctor. Great.
All right, Connor?
Philip, it's actually historically accurate because King James was interested in witches. He wrote a dissertation and thesis, and he was quite academically sort of involved in witchcraft and the whole concept of witch stuff. So for him to just be there to witness it instead of someone else, yeah, it kind of makes a bit of sense. It probably would be quite a way to go from London to go to a particular one. I'm sure there was one a bit closer, but because he was academically stimulated by the whole idea of witchcraft and stuff, it would make sense that he would be there.
So that was the thing then. Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
Okay, Texas Tim.
Yeah, to Paul's point, they're undermining their message by writing her as a bumbling idiot, because the Doctor is supposed to walk in and be the smartest person in the room in any given situation. What they're doing is, they're undermining that by writing her as somebody that, can't find recycled paper, which everybody said was a bit off, kind of ruined the scene in a way. And so by deliberately making her a bit too silly, instead of being the most clever, they're undermining their ideas. I mean, their pro-girl idea or pro-woman ideas by making her the dumbest girl in the show. Sorry if that's controversial.
No, I can understand where you're coming from in that case. Yeah, because that's one of the things that kind of knocked me off a bit was the fact that you're starting off with the Doctor, actually getting the authority figure thing going. Can't find the psychic paper, or does something like really, really like out there, and I'm like, really? It's like you're trying to establish an authority figure, and at the same time, it seemed like the writer was trying to like make the Doctor like, ugh, I can't find the right word at the moment. It's like, ugh. Okay, Graham.
Yeah, I agree with the guys. It is the inconsistency. I don't care what anybody says. Much like you go through the history of this show, whether it be the turbulent times that Colin Baker had, or whether it would be the inconsistent first season of Sly McCoy. Look, it's the writing. It's never the actor in the role. Case in point, look what happened when McCoy's script writing improved. So you're going to have to give the benefit of the doubt this year, folks, and see how she goes for a second year. It might not be everybody's cup of tea, but the show ain't going anywhere.
Okay, DWC.
Just to pick up a bit of what Tim has said. I mean, yeah, she's not really been written that great, and she is a bit of a bumbling fool. But at the same time, it's a really hard one because there's nothing wrong with bring flaws into your characters, and in fact it's kind of necessary to bring certain flaws into them. But yeah, I just don't know how to feel with this part, because yeah, you want her to be the Doctor, and she does feel like the Doctor a lot of the time to me. They are trying to put a bit of her, they are trying to make her a bit like David Tennant, but it's not quite there. One person has a bit too high than the other. But yeah, hopefully the next series, the writers will take this criticism to heart and they'll think up something.
All right, Connor?
Yeah, to comment on Jodie's writing, while I do think she's better, the way that I perceive it, and it's actually a criticism that I had in Ghost Monument, is that it feels like she's because it's an ensemble piece, she's blending into the group. But at the same time, I think by doing that, they're humanizing the character, the alien character. But to where David Tennant was sort of human in personality, they're also humanizing her perception and her understanding of events. So really what she's doing is she's learning as she goes, in the same way that Ryan, Graham and Yaz would, or any normal student that's going through a new experience. And it's really taken away from the character. I mean, the Who Addicts posted on Twitter yesterday, they actually gave me the perfect word for Jodie's Doctor. It just feels kind of generic. It doesn't feel like she's got that edge. It's been stripped back to a point where there's little resemblance to the other characters because she's so humanized. She's just like everyone else now. There's nothing unique, nothing stand out. And as I said, I think most of it is to do with the fact that she's learning as she goes along now, rather than the Doctor is sort of like the fact history book, as Philip alluded to. It feels now like Graham is sort of the history book. He knows everything as opposed to the Doctor. And it's just kind of like shifting the Doctor's role, the things that we would associate with the Doctor being, to all the different characters, to kind of give everyone a purpose within the ensemble and within the team. It's more like a team player sort of version of Doctor Who than it's the Doctor just navigating this group of three out of their depth, maybe, people, normal human beings, through adventure, really.
Okay, Philip.
I think Connor just said most of what I was going to say, but I will say that people say about it's a writing. I'm wondering, is it not? It might not be. Could it be just the actor can't make the writing jump off the page, and that's why everybody's saying it's the writing? Maybe it's not the writing; it's the actor. They can't perform it properly enough to make you believe in it. You know what I'm saying? Like that.
Okay, Graham.
Philip, well, I take your point. It can be the actor, and I'll tell you why. Because no matter who's the Doctor in that role this evening, we'll still be undermining and contradicting herself based on that script.
All right, Tim.
What she lacks is the arrogance. of the Doctor, because if you think about it, that's usually his biggest flaw. I mean, DWC pointed out that every Doctor has his flaws, right? Usually that's the flaw that ends up costing him his life, with the exception of 5, whose lack of arrogance cost him his life. But I mean, I would say that's might be what it is, that she doesn't have that arrogant streak where she walks in, you know, and actually basically acts like I'm the smartest person in the room. That's what she needs. I mean, in other words, Connor's right. They're playing this as an ensemble piece, which is okay to a certain point. But at the end of the day, she needs to be in charge. And if she makes a mistake, she should make a big mistake to where, you know, everybody realizes, the audience as well as the companions realize, hold on a minute, this is a bit dangerous. And that's what's lacking. I mean, even when she was being dunked, it didn't feel that dangerous because it's the Doctor at the end of the day. And, you know, when she swam up, I was like, that's what they should have done in the first couple of scenes. Accused her of being a witch and then dunked her just so she could try and lie her way out of it, saying, no, I'm not a witch because, you know, whatever bypass system, blah, blah, blah. But I mean, yeah, that is what the character is lacking. She doesn't have the arrogance of all the previous Doctors. And it shows. I mean, she's one of 4. She's not the lead in the show. And that's something they really need to address pretty quickly.
All right, DWC.
Not to stray completely off the Witchfinders here, just really to make a small point, but to carry on from what Tim said, do you think maybe the reason they're not writing it too arrogant is they don't want people to start complaining, oh, an arrogant female character on television? I mean, I really hope that's not the situation, but it's something that kind of food for thought, man.
Interesting point. Okay, Paul?
Yeah, I just go back to what the rest are saying about it. Yes, she's not showing her authority like the past Doctors have been. I mean, if you look at Mistress Savage, she was more in control. She had more authority than the Doctor. And really, if you look at the past Doctors, it would have been always the other way around. It would always have come across the Doctor's in charge, but it's not. And that's what the problem is.
Okay, Beef?
Yeah, sort of echoing that sentiment, to be honest with you, that Connor and that Paul just brought up. To be honest with you, it's sort of I said earlier on in the season that the Doctor sort of seemed to lack agency with the trailers. It seemed to lack identity. Something I was worried about when I said Bland is coming, and to a certain degree, it is sort of ending up that way. Yeah, and with regards to the Doctor being in peril this week, it's sort of, well, yeah, it was peril, but it really wasn't peril. And the thing is, you get the idea that basically the Doctor wasn't in control of it. And the thing is, you would say, for argument's sake, with someone like, the Seventh Doctor, he would allow himself to be put into a situation because he was going to get something out of it, or that there was an ulterior motive to it. And the Doctor just, is basically a sort of a bystander who's just sitting there, waiting for the train to take them to some point, but doesn't really get there or do anything to make any difference to it. It just seems to be just rolling along. And there's nothing that really that is setting it apart at the moment. It's just going to get forgotten, I think. The one thing I'm struggling with so far this year is that there's not much in it that's got really rewatch value. Ironically, I'm not a big Matt Smith fan, and I saw some of the repeats of some of the Matt Smith season this weekend. And it is really a night and day difference. And like I say, I'm not the biggest Matt Smith fan, but it was a case of I actually felt an emotional investment in watching the stories that I've not had this year. I've had no real sort of emotional involvement that, oh my God, what's going to happen? Oh, I want it to go this way or go that way. It's just a case of I'm just watching it and sort of feeling empty by the end of it and just sort of, well, okay, that's it.
Okay, Philip. Or sorry, Graham. Philip, you had your hand up a second ago. That's what threw me off. Okay.
There we go. Look, now, before the mega debate begins in the comments section, folks, it's different strokes for different folks, as we say every week on this show. In no way am I portraying Jodie Whittaker. No, she can't. Look, she's got a lot on her CV. She can't be a bad actress. It's the writing. we're going to have to see if there's a characterisation or a momentum shift in her second season, just like the case was with Peter Capaldi, much to Philip's chagrin, when he went from the angry man to the rock star grandfather. But we'll see what happens in season 2. Maybe the second album will improve things. Here's hoping, because none of us wants this show to fail. We can argue, whine, bitch, moan and complain all we want, and we can, quite frankly, make me hurl with laughter once a week on social media about some of the things that people moan and bitch about with regards to this show. But at the end of the day, just for shits and giggles, that Stephen Moffat's looking pretty good round about now, isn't he?
Okay, Texas Tim.
Yeah, to follow up on Beef's point, that's the issue. Because the doctor should walk into a situation, especially a historical situation, where she knows what's going on, or she has knowledge of the past, and she knows pretty much the whole way of thinking, should use that to their advantage. Seven would have had everything already figured out and went back and fixed something so that he would, be victorious by the end of the episode. And I know that's a cheat, but I'm just saying that's doctor-ish. That's doctor-ish. That's what she's doing. Again, is just playing along and being one of the crowd, and I think that's to the detriment. And like Graham says, it's the writing. I mean, it's not the acting, I don't think, at all. She's not been treated well by the writing. And it has nothing to do, I mean, from the viewpoint of the audience, it has nothing to do with her being a woman. I think this is really the problem, is that they're not writing the doctor correctly at this point. They're not writing him as the person he has been for all this time.
Okay, Connor?
To pick apart the writing a bit further, I complained earlier about Ryan being kind of like Mr. Exposition. Like he tells the people around him his problems. And I think that one thing about this series, and I've got to agree with Beef, it's making it kind of bland, is that I think every episode is being suffocated by this dump of exposition at every turn. Instead of showing the action, which is like a screenwriting rule, they're telling the audience what's going on. So, for example, at the beginning, when the doctor approached the lake and saw the witch trial, she said, "Oh, it's a witch trial." And then 2 seconds later, you had Siobhan Finnan's character read out the charges. Why couldn't that have been that scene where you just witness the witch trial? It doesn't take a genius to work out that it's a witch trial. It's kind of dumbing down the episodes, and it's dumbing down the story, and it's dumbing down the intelligence of the characters in that situation, because like I said, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to know that that's a witch trial. And I'm pretty sure that, like, even though Ryan didn't know who Rosa Parks was, I'm pretty sure that he'd be able to tell that actually, yeah, they're dunking someone who's been accused of a witch. Oh, it's a witch trial. It's sure, don't tell. That's the rule. And I think that that's what they need to start doing. It's too much dialogue. I think it's because Chibnall is primarily, because he's a drama writer, is a bit of a kitchen sink drama writer as opposed to sci-fi and action. He's more used to dialogue than he is reams of action. So he's relying on the dialogue to tell the story rather than the action and the dialogue. And I think that is beginning to weigh upon the episodes, because it's just boring. It just takes that element away from it. And I think that Doctor Who, in that it is a sci-fi drama show, needs that action, needs that alien threat for it to be enjoyable week on week.
Okay, Philip?
I'm sorry to bring this back up again, but everybody's still blaming the writing. I don't think like people like Melanie Blackman, DJ Patel, and all the other ones are writing her the same way, because they're all different writers, and they will write the Doctor in their own ideology. So I'm still saying it's not so much the writing; it's so much how she performs that writing that's making her not Doctorish enough.
Okay, great.
Yeah, sorry.
Just to put Connor up on his point, I see where you're coming from with the whole exposition dump and whatnot. My only counter argument to that would be, would a 6 or 7 year old in 2018 necessarily know that? I know these days they've got Google and Wikipedia and all that, but we didn't necessarily look that up unless they had to for a school assignment or whatnot. Again, there's maybe a way of trimming it down a bit, but c'est la vie, that's the way that people, I mean, you say Chibnall, the way Chibnall writes, but again, this wasn't a Chibnall story. Granted, he's got to sign off on it, but c'est la vie. And with regards to the ensemble, I pretty much concur with what the guys have stated. Actually, I was getting a wee bit lost in the crowd with regards to that. I don't know what they've got planned for season 12, but as much as I love the majority of these characters, maybe it's time to dim it back to maybe 2 plus the Doc again, or maybe even 1.
Okay, Connor?
Yeah, I take your point there, actually. But also, does it have to, like, I don't think it has to be understood as a witch trial. Just take it at face value. Like, someone's being accused of being a witch, they're going to be killed for it. It's sort of like, I think that the historical facts is another bit of exposition that is probably weighting it down. And yeah, it was a witch trial, and yeah, a 7 or 8 year old might not know what a witch trial is, but does that actually really matter in the grand scheme of things? Because to them, it would just be a witch getting dunked in a lake, and if they drown, they die. If they survive, they die anyway. So it would be, you would be focusing on the action and the threat rather than explaining what this whole scenario they've caught themselves up in actually is. So again, I think as part of the exposition argument, I think that the historical facts as well, because it's trying to be educational, is weighting it down as well.
Okay, Paul?
Yeah, just to go back what Phil was saying, do you think then that if Jodie was the Doctor in an RTD episode or a Moffat episode, do you think she would be better or not?
No, because it's not the writing, it's her performance that's letting the side down, because she hasn't got that kind of like Doctor's range to her. We've seen her do this, 8 times now, episode, and everyone still has a problem with her. Whether it be the right, it's her, it's not the writing, because you've got so many different people writing different story, and yet we're still complaining about her Doctor. So it's got to be her, not the writing.
At the same time, remember, we are dealing with guest writers who haven't written for this show before. So, we do have to write that in as a factor. And I think that might be part of the reason, like I said, I kind of agree with Beef, that maybe that's why they don't have a grasp on the character. They've not written for this particular show before. And that's why it's kind of a little bit scary coming into the season, because you might have been better off bringing in some past writers who have written for Doctor Who before. Where, I know you're trying to go in a new direction and all this stuff, but at the same time, when you bring in, it's like bringing in the wrong chefs to make their own dish in a way. It's just, not going to work sometimes. And I think that's what maybe some people are catching on to. Okay, Connor?
Phil, I would like to agree with you, but to be honest, I can't, because I think that agreeing with you would be the easy way out. Just sack the actress, get a new one, problem solved. But it's not, because at the end of the day, it could well be Chris Chibnall and the writers in the writer's room, because we've got to remember this is a writer's room as well this time around, that have realised Jodie's character rather than her. She may have had input in it, but she may not have been the one who fully made the character her own. It could have well been points of Chibnall and Vinay Patel and Mallory Blackman and Joy Wilkinson and Ed Heim and all of the various writers of the series to build this Doctor up to the character that she is. So I think that by blaming the actress and saying, well, she's the problem, let's sack her, get someone else in, problem solved, I think that that's the easy way out, because then you're taking... the writing's then probably not going to improve. And at the end of the day, it's Chibnall's vision of the show, and he's going to be the one that writes the Doctor, so he's going to be the one that builds this character.
So then you're saying then that if what we're getting now from her is how it is with her, then you're gonna sit there and be satisfied with the fact for the next season we're still going to get that same kind of like, I'm not sure about her in season 12 again.
Yeah,
Because-
but I have to hop in on your argument here for a second. If we followed that philosophy, they would have fired Peter Capaldi after his first series, because a lot of people were not happy with the way he was written and portrayed in season 8. So
Yeah,
I think that for a majority of the time, the actors are the scapegoat in that
Yeah.
situation.
I understand that they'll have time to look back at this season and tweak it, and hopefully it will be for the better for next season. But I'm just not sure. I'm just not sure whether it's going to be the case.
yeah, because before this season started, I went and I watched some various different things from here and there that, Jodie Whittaker's done. She's got the range. She can do it easily. It's just, like I said, I kind of agree with you, though. I think something's going on there where maybe we should have brought on writers who are more experienced with Doctor Who itself, rather than going off and it's nice to have the occasional guest writer, but in this case they brought in like 5 guest writers who've never written for this series, and that's kind of a gamble, especially if they've not had any experience with this particular character. So that could be what's going on. Okay, Colin, you've had your hand up for a couple minutes.
Yeah. So I think it is the writing. I mean, the writers are really giving the Doctor the gravitas that she should have. I mean, it's if you don't like that, she kind of act it. She can. I mean, the pulling faces. Well, the pulling faces you can put that down to her, but you really need to give her a pair of cojones of her own.
Okay, Paul.
Yeah, just to go back about the writing or Jodie debate. If we look at last week's episode, which was Kablam, I think the majority of us thought that was more Doctor Who, and she was more of the Doctor last week than the other weeks she's been in. So doesn't that therefore prove that it's the writing, because the writing last week was more sci-fi, it was more what we were used to.
Plus, we got to remember when a new Doctor comes in, especially with the fact we've got a new Doctor, new showrunner, and they're trying to change everything, in their particular image, so to speak. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't with folks. Heck, look at what happened when Nathan Turner came in. Oh, God. But just to give you one example. So in this case, like I said, I'm hoping what'll happen is this. What the best thing you can do if something's not working, learn from it, and learn from your mistakes and build on it for the next time. We have to remember all this stuff was written, filmed, and done months ago. So if there's something you're not finding appropriate in this particular series, it's likely not going to be fixed. But hopefully when they go into series 12, they'll sit down, they'll think about it, get some feedback, and say, okay, this didn't work, and this didn't work. So maybe we should try this, and this. And that's the best thing you can do, because we do know Series 12 is happening, which is, I think, funny as hell, because even though it's been in pre-production for like a month now, they still haven't even announced it yet. But that's the BBC. But, okay, Graham.
While we're on the subject of getting feedback, where's my goddamn surveys, BBC? You were quick enough to do that when the old man was in the blue box.
Okay, Connor.
I think in terms of writers, I would like to see someone who kind of makes a living off writing science fiction, as opposed to shows like Broadchurch and Line of Duty and all these like procedural sort of like kitchen sink dramas that bolster up the TV schedule these days. Get someone like Neil Gaiman, for example, in Free Reign, of course. No Nightmare of Silver sort of debacle with it, but get him like to do Free Reign writing and see what comes of it. And I'm pretty certain that you would get something that is closer to a more traditional Doctor Who than you would someone that's just coming from, for example, Broadchurch, and try to understand the show and write from there. I think that there's many subtleties and many sort of differences between genres, and I think that it's important to have a focus on maybe getting writers that are more experienced and make a living out of science fiction rather than drama to bring out the best in Doctor Who. because I think that in recent years, RTD was a kitchen sink drama writer. Moffat was a comedy writer primarily. And Chibnall, again, is much like RTD in being a kitchen sink drama writer. We haven't actually had hardcore sort of science fiction writers since probably the classic days, and even then it was probably a rarity. So, and because science fiction is very much a loved sort of genre now, with shows like Walking Dead and Game of Thrones to a certain extent, which is fantasy, but it comes into the same sort of genre. Find someone that is well versed in that sort of paradigm rather than kitchen sink drama writer. I think that that's probably going to, if that is done, if they do that at some point, I think it will be of benefit to the show. I think it's just a case of getting the subtleties of the drama, the subtleties of the genre right at this point. And I don't think that some of these writers have really versed themselves in science fiction, fantasy enough to deliver the best that we hope for out of Doctor Who.
Okay, before I move on to the Aeroflux again, I think what we got going on, I think, with Series 11 in some people's eyes, is a classic case of what I call the Mexicali soup syndrome. Now, a lot of you are not going to know that story because I heard this story when I was all the way back in primary school for you folks in the UK, elementary school here. Just to make a long story short, Mom goes, I'm going to make my Mexicali soup, which everybody in the family loves. But over the course of the week, as she's, they're going to have this dinner on the end of the week. Like the father walks up and goes, Mom, I like your Mexicali soup, but please don't use onions in it because the onions make it too strong. Then later you have the son walk up and he goes, I like your Mexicali soup, but I hate it when you use this. Then you have the daughter comes up and goes, Mom, I like your Mexicali soup, but I don't like it when you use this, and then of course by the end of the week they all sit down to dinner. The mother comes out, she's got the big steaming pot in her hand, she sets it on the table. And then the family, their mouths are watering. And then she pops the top off the pot. And the one kid looks at her and goes, Mom, this isn't your Mexicali soup. It's a bowl of hot water. And I think that's what's going on a little bit. Because one of the big arguments I've been seeing over the last couple of weeks is one of the big complaints was everybody was like, Moffat his plots are too complicated, convoluted, and have too many holes in them as a result of his complex storytelling. And now that they've kind of tried to simplify it down, it's come out with a different feel. And a lot of people are like, it's too simple. It's dumbed down. It's beating me over the head with its open, outright narrative and shit like that. And I'm like, that's why I said it's flashing me back to when I was a kid and I read that story. That's why I'm calling it the Mexicali soup syndrome, because it fits right into that old story I heard when I was like not even 10 years old. Yes, I'm old, people. Get over it. Okay, let's go on to Philip.
Just pick up on what Connor was talking about. I think people will do well to have some sort of input supervisor, someone that knows Doctor Who, like say, go and have a chat with somebody of the old classic time. They know how to structure Doctor Who and how Doctor Who is supposed to be written. So have a word with them, put it into his kind of workload, and might get something out of it. It's the sort of thing he needs to do.
It's time they winged out a Ouija board and channeled Philip Hinchcliffe. Oh, okay. Texas Tim.
To be fair, Philip, he's been watching this show as long as you have. He knows the show. The biggest problem, and Connor made some really good points about television writing in general. The only problem I can see with this series so far is just the writing as far as the Doctor is concerned. They're not writing her as the Doctor. They're writing her as Tim would say, a bland version or a greatest hits sort of version of the Doctor, which is missing the main point. And that is that she's not in charge. She's just kind of along for the ride. And that is the main problem with it as we go on right now, I would say.
Okay, Texas Tim.
That was me.
I'm sorry. Beefhead.
Yeah, it's I get what I get what you're saying, Brian. I get what Connor's saying. I get what Tim's saying. I get what Phil's saying. Yeah, they're all equally valid points. I think the way that I'm looking at it is, it's like getting a plumber to do your electrics. The majority of the you've hired Chris Chibnall, who has got experience with Doctor Who. He's got experience with Torchwood. That's what the guy is paid to do. So do the bloody thing. And the rest of them, well, they're primarily, they are drama writers, but either in mediums that are a lot of it is stage plays or written word. There needs to be, I'm all for getting new writers in, and that's been something that they've done it successfully. But there needs to be, I think, you can't always say a new broom is going to sweep everything clean. You need to perhaps have something of the past to bridge that gap. And what I wanted them to do this year, and this is one thing that they failed to do, apart from a very couple of exceptions, is that I wanted them to go hard. You've got to go hard or go home, basically. Be bold, be really pushing it every week, really pushing that envelope. Because if you're going to make such a big change, and to say that they've put Jodie in the part, you've made this big thing. You want to really push it. Then don't do this and then back away from it because you don't know how the response is going to be. Then embrace it, run with it, and push it hard. And if it upsets people, then fine, because you've already upset people. So you might as well just go all out on it. And I do agree with Brian. It's sort of like, maybe, I think we just got to draw a line under this year and just say, well, it's going to be this. And all I hope is that there is a lesson learned, because I think that, if that lesson isn't learned, then perhaps that is the time to say, well, I don't know. Then that's probably the time to be genuinely worried.
Okay, Graham.
And I was just going to say, I agree with your analogy with the Mexican soup there. Either Moffat's too complicated, Chibnall's too simple. There's no middle ground. I think we should just, like we've alluded to, you're just going to have to draw a line under this. You're either going to love this season or you're going to goddamn hate it. It's going to probably be defined as the Marmite season of New Who. Those of you that love it, great, fantastic. Toddle on off into the sunset, and we're happy for you. Those who are indifferent to it, same thing. You're never going to please everybody, and no matter what you get, somebody somewhere's going to be pissed. Different strokes for different folks.
Yeah, because recently I was watching a documentary, and it was about the Peter Davison years, and it's kind of reminded me of Davison's second season. Remember, you went from having episodes like Earthshock, Blake, and all this in his first series, and then you went into the second one and you wound up with Warriors of the Deep.
Actually, that was his third.
Well, that was third. Either way, you see what I mean? When you went into further seasons, there was just ideas that got lost that were prevalent in his first series. And the second series, if I remember, it was like, but it was like, that was one thing they went on about, was how in the second series they seemed to have lost something with him. And I think that's what's going on. They decided we're going to do this bold new direction, but in a lot of people's eyes, it's not working. Okay, so Connor, you got your hand up.
I was just thinking then, I said that science fiction is kind of a big genre at the moment, but looking at the BBC and looking at British TV in general, apart from a very few certain shows, I think in the UK there isn't really a sci-fi market. So I'm wondering if since 2005, while it had its sci-fi elements, maybe Doctor Who has been tried to be pushed into the drama market a bit more to be able to be sold to foreign markets, etc., to be commissioned. Because there's no distinguishable market for science fiction in the UK, which is the primary. I mean, Doctor Who is an international show these days, but I think its primary focus is the UK market. That's certainly, like, in terms of viewing figures, that's what's put onto the ratings, lists as opposed to just the American ones. And whereas in America you would have that market for science fiction and fantasy and, you know, the various horror and the subgenres that come with that. I think in the UK it's almost tried to be pushed into drama, into the same market as I said, Broadchurch and Line of Duty and all of these 9 o'clock BBC shows. And while it's brought some emotional weight to it and some different dramatic elements, I think that it's kind of stripped away a bit of its DNA because it's lessening on the science fiction front, because otherwise it might not necessarily be commissioned because there's no market for that particular sort of show in the UK anymore. I think it's maybe just to do with trend and market perception of TV at the moment as well. And I think that's been like that since 2005. And maybe that is why they entrusted RTD with bringing the show back, because he was a dramatic writer. He was a very popular, very well accomplished dramatic writer, and he promised that as opposed to the science fiction, the high sci-fi that we've became accustomed to in the 80s, even 70s.
Okay, Texas Tim.
Well, it's kind of that when it was brought back in 2005, it was brought back as a drama. So I mean, that's what it was brought back as, with its sci-fi tendencies, but it's never been a straight science fiction show, to be honest.
Okay, Philip.
Let's, for example, put up one of Jodie's episodes up against Ark in Space, right? Ark in Space is purely sci-fi because that was with a bit of monster stuff thrown into it. That's sci-fi. Now, these days, like Connor and like Tim just said, it's more of a drama show now rather than a sci-fi show, and I think that's what's missing. It needs to be more of a sci-fi thing, like it was back in the day when stories like Ark in Space were put out.
Well, yeah, one point I do kind of agree with, and I'm sitting there thinking on it, is the fact that, yeah, they do need to get rid of the doctor's your buddy. Yeah, I can agree on that. It seems like, you know, like you've all said to some of you, that they're trying to write her into an ensemble rather than have her stand out a bit more. Because when you sit back and think about it, you know, when, say, Capaldi, as the doctor walked into a room, you automatically knew he's in charge, he's there. And, you know, he stayed a bit distant at the beginning from his companion and all that. And he kind of stood out. Same thing with Matt Smith. Very first episode, boom. He was charged. He was there. And he just had it. Tennant. You know, you can make the argument going back. And what I think is they've tried to blend the doctor into a crowd. You know, trying to bring 4 people in at the same time. So, like I said, I think that's part of the thing maybe that they need to learn from, is maybe they do need to, you know, trim down the TARDIS team, so to speak, coming in the next series. I think that might be a good idea given what we've seen. Okay, we've rambled on for just over an hour now, so let's go ahead and we're going to rate this sucker and put it to bed. So I can't wait to hear what your guys' ratings are in the Witchfinders. So let's start at the bottom this time. Texas Tim, out of 10, how do you rate the Witchfinders?
I'm going to give it an 8.
All right. Callan?
I think I'll give it an 8 as well.
All right. Beefhead?
It's a slight bump on last week, but like I said before, you know, if you're stuck in the desert and, you know, you get a drink of pee at the end of it, it's still a drink. So it's sort of, yeah, it's only slightly improved because everything else is mediocre. And I get tired of saying, well, hopefully next week it will be better. And to pick up on Phil's point about it being the wrong actress, I think to a certain degree, you have to put a bit at Jodie, because she should say, my doctor wouldn't do that, or I want my doctor to do something else. There needs to be an actor input into against the director. So I'm going to give it a 6. Yeah, like I say, yeah, we've hammered all the points that I think need to be made. It's just more of the same. Go hard or go home. Be bold, be brash, and be lively. Because I tell you what, it wasn't living up to the loud colours that we had in all the promotion. It's just got a bit dour.
Okay, Graham?
Despite your conversation we've had about writers, actresses, and, you know, chin balls, oh my, I enjoyed this tonight. I can't King James or no, and his amusing ambiguity, auto crush the word Ryan didn't even annoy me. So 8.5 out of 10.
All right. Paul?
This is a hard one for me. Well, it was a hard one for me to score. I enjoyed it, but I didn't enjoy it as much as some of the others I have. So it's going to be a 7 from me.
All right, Bo?
8.5.
All right, DWC?
Like I said, had mixed feelings towards it. This wasn't good, wasn't bad. And when you go over that, when you have a mixed view, you have to give a mixed score, if anything. So about a 6.
Okay, Philip?
To me, it was kind of old school Doctor Who in a lot of ways. I kind of enjoyed it like that. So for me, I'm giving it initially, it was a 7 at first, but I'm going to give it an 8 this time.
All right, Connor?
7.5 for the story, but an 11 for the Tarantino reference. Get more of them in there.
I'm going to round it out with an 8.5. Like I said, there were definitely things that were missing, but the cinematography was incredible. Like I said, there were some really good scenes in here. Other than, oh gosh, the soliloquies with poor Ryan. That stuff's got to end, Okay. But the one thing I did like about that scene, though, was the fact that, that's right, I lost such and such, I lost such and such. And then you got King James going, well, mine was like murdered, tortured, killed, and okay. So it's like, yeah, you kind of got one up in that, in that sense. All right. So like I said, folks, you got to remember, this is their first series out. They're trying something completely different. And like I've been telling people, you got to stay optimistic, because hopefully what they're going to do is they're going to sit down at the end of the series. They're going to say, okay, what worked, what didn't? And then they're going to say, all right, well, maybe we should try this. Maybe we should try that. This writer was good. This writer didn't work. Maybe we'll, like, I agree with Beef. They definitely need to let Jodie maybe have some more input on the character of the Doctor. But from what I understand, I thought she was getting some input on it. But, you never know. It's the BBC. Stuff happens that we don't want to know about. Evil things on floor 6, as we used to say. All right, so next week is episode 9. It Takes You Away. Well, all I can say is, the teasers look good. You never know. So until then, everybody, please take care. See you on the flip side. Have a good one. Enjoy what's left of your weekend.
Bye.
Good night, everyone.
Bye, everyone.